should know that I'm someone who was once too scared to dance at middle school dances, so this is progress in life. Thank you for doing that. As you settle down, one thing I'd just love you to notice is how you feel. Just notice how you feel versus when you came into the room, if there's any change. Notice what this feeling feels like in your body. One of the reasons I like to do this exercise, the reason I like to start with this, of course, it's great. It gets our blood flowing, gets the energy up. It puts me out of breath, so it's hard for me to talk to you. So it slows everything down, which is good. But one of the reasons I like to do this is because I think in our culture, we pursue happiness and we overlook joy. We overlook these smaller moments of joy. And these ideas are often mixed up together in our culture. So I think it's worth me taking just a moment to pull those two ideas apart. So happiness is a broad evaluation of how we feel about our lives over time. If I were to ask you to imagine your ideal life right now, the ideal life that you yourself could be living in this moment, and rate that a 10, and then imagine the worst possible life, everything going wrong that you could be living, and that would be a 1. Where would you be on that scale? We don't just snap our fingers and go, I'm a 7, right? It takes some evaluation, some reflection, right? We have to think about how we feel about our work, whether we feel like we have a sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. How are our relationships with our family, with our partner? How our health is, right? All of those different factors go into this sort of evaluation of how happy we are. And so sometimes it can be hard to put a finger on it. It can feel a little bit vague. But joy is much simpler and more immediate. So the way that psychologists define joy is as an intense, momentary experience of positive emotion. And we can measure that through direct these little, big effects. It's an inherently attractive emotion. One of the reasons for this is that joy is contagious. Another thing that we see in the happy dance, right? If the person next to you is dancing wildly, it sends the energy over your way. All of our emotions are contagious. We spread them to each other through our tone of voice, our gestures, our facial expressions, even our walk can communicate to people our emotional state. So if we know that someone is in a state of joy, it draws us toward them because we want to catch that emotion. And this can have some surprising effects. First of all, it makes us more physically attractive. So scientists have studied this. They've taken these computer-generated composite faces. And some of these faces are they've computer-generated them to be really, really good-looking. And they make them not smiling. And then they take average-looking faces, and they make them smiling. And what they find is that those average-looking smiling faces are considered, when independent people rate them, more physically attractive than the stony-faced, supermodel, good-looking faces. So when we project joy, we become more attractive to other people. And this can actually have business implications. So entrepreneurs, when they're raising money, when they spend more time at the peak of joy in their presentation, when they exhibit joy and they sort of display an elevated level of joy and they spend more time at that peak, they raise more money. And salespeople, when salespeople exhibit genuine joy, and it has to be genuine, it can't be fake, we spend more time browsing in a store, we give higher customer satisfaction ratings, and we're more likely to return for a repeat visit. So something as simple as a little moment of joy can have big effects. Joy also sharpens our minds. So if you were preparing to meet with a new doctor, I imagine you'd probably be gathering your list of symptoms, making sure you don't forget to tell them anything, but you might be worth investing in thinking up a really good joke. Because research shows that doctors in a state of joy come to a correct diagnosis more quickly. Research also shows that business people in a state of joy make better decisions and that they consider a broader range of scenarios in the process of making those decisions. Joyful negotiators reach more win-win agreements than those in a neutral state of mind. And research also shows that we are up to 12% more productive in a state of joy. So I think we often have this primary theory, but if we mind, we would never be able to sort of transcend and grow. So the theory of positive emotions is ability of how flexible are cognitive, and this is creativity. So if we want to come up with more creative ideas, or we want to open people's minds to trying something new, to trying a new service, a new experience, a new product, then putting them in a state of joy is an ideal place to be. Joy also strengthens our relationships. Research shows that when we celebrate good news with someone else, that this deepens our sense of trust, our sense of connection, our sense of intimacy in a relationship, and it heightens our overall relationship satisfaction. Sharing joy with someone else tells them that we will be there for them in bad times as well as good. And joy makes us more resilient. So the way that we evolved to feel stress is kind of like a wave, right? We evolved, we encounter something stressful, our cortisol spikes, our blood pressure rises, our heart rate rises, and all of that gears us up to deal with a challenge. And what happens when we encounter persistent stress is that we never recover from that, right? We're made to feel that stress and then let that stress recede and then feel that again when we have a challenge. And what happens when we face chronic stress, which is how many of us live our lives these days, we live in this state of chronic stress, is that we never recover. And that takes a toll on our bodies over the long haul. Small moments of joy help the cardiovascular system recover from stress. They're just little release points that help us reset so that we can continue to deal with challenges over the long haul. And research shows that when we have small moments of joy in the midst of catastrophic events, that those little moments of joy can help us cope with tragic times in a more adaptive way, making us more emotionally, more physically resilient over the long haul. So I think, again, we often think joy is something we put off till after we've dealt with the stressful time. We think, I have to push through this, right? I can't take time to laugh or take time to, do something silly. I have to stay focused. But in fact, those little moments of joy can help us stay focused and help us stay productive over the long haul. So I think in meaningful ways, when we focus on joy, we don't have to pursue happiness because happiness starts to find us. Now, I should probably take a minute and back up because, of course, Jay introduced me as a designer, and I am a designer, so I should explain how I ended up coming here to speak about joy. I set out design school when an offhand comment. I was looking at my work, all of the things that I had made over the course of the first year of design school, and this professor said, "Your work gives me a feeling of joy." And the other professors started to nod. And this was so strange to me because I had always thought about joy as this intangible, ephemeral, elusive thing, right? You can catch a few moments of it as it drifts by, but it's not something that you can predict or produce. It's certainly not connected to material things. I think many of us grow up this way thinking that, money doesn't buy happiness and that things are not supposed to be a source of joy. We're not supposed to be materialistic. We're not supposed to think too much about the stuff that's around us. And yet here's a professor saying that stuff, just ordinary things, created a feeling of joy. So I asked the panel, what is it about these things that creates a feeling of joy? How do tangible things create this intangible feeling of joy? And they couldn't answer the question. And so this set me off on a journey to try to understand what is the connection between these material things and this elusive, evanescent feeling of joy. And what I discovered is that there is actually a robust body of research and growing body of research that shows that these two things are connected, that our surroundings have a profound influence on our emotions.